Hello, hello. Welcome to Harrell Squared. This is your host, Trey Harrell. Along with me, my father, Bobby Harrell, former South Carolina Speaker of the House.
Hanging out with his son, who's a former federal prosecutor.
Yep. We appreciate...
We got a lot of formers in our name,
A lot of formers,
buddy.
a lot of formers. But, you know, that just means we get to enjoy life now.
That's exactly what it means.
That's
I
what
get
it
to
means.
hang out with my grandchildren. Yeah. You get to hang out with your dad. How much better does that get? I mean, really.
I tell you what doesn't get any better is we get when you're former and you're not doing it, you get to actually tell people like it is. And I think that's the benefit and the beauty of this show is we actually talk about how things really are. And today's episode, I think, is going to be a very good episode in that scenario because, of course, we're going to talk about Clemson and Carolina, but we're really going to hammer down on Murdaugh, the civil detention motion that was filed earlier this week, the change of venue motion that was argued, as well as talk about the government potential, quote, government shutdown and its ramifications on South Carolina.
That's at federal level.
Yep. And we're going to talk about the mask ban. So buckle up and get ready to have some fun.
And if we have a little time at the end, we're going to talk about Dog the Bounty Hunter just a little better.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. So let's dive into it. Cox are playing Troy. Line is 6.5 in the Cox favor. The usual, who's be a good team or be a great team. Things you got to remember so far is that LSU lost to Troy in 2017. We all remember that game.
Yeah, but we all heard about how East Carolina had been a giant killer 3 or 4 years ago, too. You know, this game, if I think South Carolina is going to be a good team and a great team. And they really better be. I mean, 2-2, you got this game, you got Vanderbilt, maybe Tennessee, and then I don't even want to talk about the rest of the schedule.
Then we probably won't be doing a lot of Gamecock segments.
That's right. But the good news right now is Carolina and Clemson are both 2-2.
I love it. Yeah, all is right with the world.
The class of South Carolina is Coastal Carolina hanging out there at 4-0, having beaten such powers as Kansas, the Citadel, and Buffalo.
Oh, and what Louisiana, I think, was the other team they beat. But getting back to the Gamecocks, here's some storylines that I think we really need to pay attention to is, you know, Kevin Harris has got to pick it up. Plain and simple. You know, he's had, let's get the stats down so that people know what we're talking about. He's had 35 carries for 92 yards, and he's fourth behind Zaquandre Wright, Juju McDowell, and Marshawn Lloyd. This guy led the SEC in rushing last year with on a 2-8 team, and he's fourth on the team right now. He's got to pick it up.
Kevin does have to pick it up, but I got to tell you, the 5 or 7 guys who've got to pick it up are the guys in front of Kevin Harris.
I 100% agree with that.
If you get Kevin Harris a crease in the line, he's going to gain 8, 10, 12 yards. He did it. We saw it over and over and over again last year. And I don't understand how what is basically the same offensive line can't get it done this year where they got it done so masterfully last year. I don't understand that. But Kevin definitely has to pick it up. But, you know, it's a team sport. And he needs the guys in front of him to kind of make a little bit of space for him so he can. Now, Juju McDowell, he's been fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. He is a freshman kid. And the defense have been fun to watch. You know, through 4 games, they've forced 10 turnovers, 7 interceptions, and 3 fumbles, and they're tied for 6 nationally. So, you know, they've been fun to watch, and you got to love that little aspect of it. But
I meant to jot down of those 10 turnovers, how many turned into points. I know 3 did not last week, so I don't know what the overall number on that is. But, you know, when the defense turns the ball over, the offense has to score, and we'll go back to those line woes.
Yeah. So, minus 6.5 for the Cox. Good team or great team?
Oh, I think they're going to be a good and great team.
A good and great team? Mm-hmm. Very nice. All right. Moving right along, since we got a lot to cover too, let's go down to Clemson. I want to say this little stat real quick because it's always fun to say this stuff. Clemson has slipped to number 25 after their double overtime loss. It's the first time since 2014 they've had 2 regular season losses.
How in the world does a team fall without getting annihilated on the field from number 9 to number 25. I mean, they came within a hair's breadth of being not even in the top 25. Yeah. How does a team fall that far? Does that indicate a lack of respect by the national media for the team? What is it? Is it people around the country, or they never really liked them anyway, and so because they're the upstarts and they're giving them their comeuppance? I mean, it struck me that they dropped so far. I figured they dropped from 9th to 17th to something in the teens, upper teens. Yeah. But I was stunned to see they dropped all the way to 25th. Well, frankly, I don't think they deserve to drop that far.
Well, I mean, look, the college football rankings are just. It's just a ridiculous way that we've got it set up. I'm so happy to see Coastal doing well, okay? Yep. But they're ranked number 16 in the country. Who have they beaten? I mean, that's the thing.
They beat the Citadel, buddy. They beat Kansas.
And that powerhouse that is Kansas.
Yes, that's right.
But, it is what it is, and that's great. Stat on Clemson, 30 consecutive wins in Memorial Stadium, longest active winning streak in the nation, and they've won 10 games in a row against Boston College dating back to 2011. The line on the game is Clemson by 2 touchdowns, 14.5. Clemson going to be a good team or a great team?
Clemson's going to be a good team.
You think it'll be a good team? I actually think they're going to be a great team.
I know we have to do this every week, but you got to explain to people what we mean by good team and great team.
A good team wins. A great team covers the spread.
There you go.
So you can lose and still be a great team.
Right.
Yeah. But in this scenario, I actually think, last year, this was DJ's first game, and he passed first big game, because Travis was the game that Trevor had COVID last year.
Right.
And he passed for 342 yards and 2 touchdowns and rushed for another one. I think this is the game he wakes up. So we'll see.
I hope so for Clemson's sake, because if he doesn't wake up, then they're in for it for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I can't imagine any scenario where they end up in the playoffs now. I mean, and it's fun. And it's funny. Coach Sweeney was all about not expanding beyond 4. 12's probably looking pretty good to him right now.
I mean, and that's the thing. If Clemson can win the Atlantic Coast Conference, can win their division, and we have some other issues, because we're going to have issues in the SEC. Ole Miss and Arkansas are going to give Alabama a run for their money. So we're going to have something over there. Arkansas, and Georgia. But we're going to have a very interesting synopsis. And so, I wouldn't necessarily count Clemson out. I want to count Clemson out. Everything in my core wants to count Clemson out. But I think that if they can figure out a way to win the ACC, it's kind of one of those scenarios where this team's won some national championships. And I really can't believe I'm saying this, by the way. But these teams have won some national championships. They've consistently done that, and they put butts in the seats, right? Which is, let's really get down to it. It's a business at the end of the day, particularly with an NIL. And so if they can figure out a way to win the Atlantic Coast Conference, I think there's a real shot that they get into the playoffs. If they don't lose they're going to lose another game, because they're going to lose around Thanksgiving. They're going to lose a game.
Yeah, we're counting on that loss happening. Yeah. I think even if they win the Atlantic Coast Conference this time, it would be awfully hard. I mean, things can happen. You can have other champions with 2 losses in the Big 10, Big 12, and the probably not in the SEC, but lots of Pac-12. You could have other teams with 2 losses, and that would have to be the scenario for Clemson to be able to have a chance to get into the playoffs. And I said it jokingly a minute ago, but you and I talked about it when they first started talking about the 12-team playoff. We were all for it.
Yeah.
We think it's a great idea. It brings more people, more teams in. Clemson is going through right now what a lot of people said would happen to teams if they stayed at 4 teams and they got knocked out early.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen now? Are the Clemson Stars going to start thinking NFL and protect my knees? And, I mean, are they start thinking like that? Because I'm thinking they're beginning to think that the national championship thing is slipping away.
I think you're dead on. I think it'll be really fun to watch it play out over the next few weeks.
I do too.
And that scenario. All right. Well, we've talked about 2 of the favorite things that we love to talk about, college football, on this. Now I think it's time to move to the news of the day.
Yeah, the news of the day. I want to ask you a question. I saw that they have a Murdaugh civil detention motion. What is a civil detention? Sounds like something that you would do in a backwards country somewhere where you just grab somebody off the street because you're civilly detaining them. What is civil detention in the United States?
If you think about it, you go back and you read the Old Testament where they had debtors' prisons. Okay, we don't have debtors' prisons in the United States.
Thank the Lord.
All right, thank the Lord, right? Because everybody who has too much credit card debt and can't pay it would be locked up. But that's kind of where this is. And, the motion that he filed was the Gloria Satterfield's the estate of Gloria Satterfield's attorney.
She being the maid who died in her home.
Allegedly fell down the stairs.
Right.
There's no proof that anything shady happened or anything.
Is she died in the home.
Yep, she died in the home. Now, that attorney filed a motion in accordance with South Carolina Code section. I definitely had to LexisNexis this to figure it out, but 1517-20 that essentially asked for the judge to, until such time that the defendant, Alex Murdaugh in this scenario, returns the petitioners, the Satterfields, property to them that was fraudulently embezzled. To have him locked up and held, or at least post a bond to do that.
Oh, wait. But this is to have him locked up and held before they go to trial, before they prove that he did, in fact, embezzle this money, before they prove all that in a court of law, they want him to go ahead and be locked up.
Yes.
As though he is accused of robbing a bank, and they're going to hold him like he robbed a bank. He robbed these people. They're saying
he hasn't been criminally charged for that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If you rob the bank, you're criminally charged. They hold you. He's not criminally charged for this, but they want to hold him anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about this, there's two ways you really have to look at this. Number one, that statute is a statute from the 1800s that we've rarely found, that has rarely been utilized and rarely used in the state of South Carolina. The only way it's been used is not to hold somebody, but it's more been used to say, okay, we think you took this property, so what we're going to do is you need to post a bond or go get an insurance policy or do something that says if you lose, the money's there. That way he can't burn through the money. That way the money's being held with the court and it's being watched so that it's there, and then we'll decide if this was embezzled or not, or do it with property.
Put it in escrow.
Essentially, which I think is a good idea in these kind of scenarios for the judge to do.
Right.
And so,
or for the judge to weigh the evidence and the likelihood of them prevailing, and if he thinks there's a decent chance of them prevailing, then I can see him doing that.
Yeah.
But to come out here and just say we want to go grab him, we want to put him in jail because we want to hold him till he pay, that's crazy talk.
And here's the issue. Like, the problem is that when that motion went out, now if you actually read the motion, everybody went to the lock Alex Murdaugh in jail part of the motion. Mm-hmm. That's not, as a lawyer, that's not what's necessary. That's the shiny bauble that they want you to look at, right?
Well, they got me.
Yeah, and they got me. I mean, I'm a lawyer, and they still got me. But the issue is, what you really need to look at is if you read that motion and dive into it, you can really dive into the facts and really start seeing the picture that their attorney is painting, which is he's doing a very good job of it. Now, while I say the motion is from the 1800s, that particular statute is from the 1800s and not really utilized, and everything else, the beauty of this is, one thing we have to talk about is, as an attorney, your job is to zealously advocate for your client. And I will say that this attorney is zealously advocating for his client purely because we're talking about it. We're paying attention. We might look at it and go, oh, he'll never get locked up. But, X, Y, or Z facts are bad, right? So he is zealously advocating for his client and doing what he needs to do.
And he could end up with a judge ordering some hold be put on money somewhere just in case. Well, and he could cause that to happen.
And that's the other issue. This lawsuit incurs with this from the Satterfield aspect. There's tons of lawsuits floating around out there with it. From the Satterfield aspect, this lawsuit includes Alex Murdaugh, other attorneys, as well as Chad Westendorf. So the only person they want locked up is Alex Murdaugh, not anybody else. Also tells you that it was all for attention. But in fighting for your client and doing what you've got to do, sometimes being the one getting the attention, you've got to be the squeaky wheel. With 8 lawsuits out there, or however many lawsuits out there, or how many others that are coming, you have to be the loudest because you have to get the most attention because you have to be the one everyone's focused on because that's the way you're going to get your client paid.
I get it. And when you've got 8 lawsuits out there, or 8 cases out there, and you've got one of the defendants in these cases hiring a very high-profile lawyer to bring attention over in that direction for him, I guess it does happen.
Yeah, and so it's. I think that it was a good play. I think it was a smart play. I think that as with everything, don't just see when you get the alert on your phone and it's that one sentence. Actually click on it and read a little bit about it, because if you're not reading about it, it's not gonna. You're not really going to understand what's going on, and that's so crucial in getting this stuff done.
No question. Well, that wasn't the only motion on the Murdaugh trial, though. We also had, and I want you to tell us about this one too, the change of venue motion. Interesting fun fact about that one.
Yep, this one is in the Mallory Beach case, which is the DUI, the BUI case that allegedly one of the Paul, his son, who passed away, who was murdered, hit the piling and threw the young girl into the water where she drowned, along with everybody else, and harmed everybody. And he was charged with 3 counts of BUI, and there's a civil case that goes along with it. In that civil case, a big thing that we need to pay attention to is they're not only suing the Murdaughs, they're suing Parker's Kitchen, which is where Paul allegedly bought the beer. They're suing Buster because Paul allegedly used Buster's ID to buy the beer, and they're suing the Murdaughs because of the boat that was used. And so the big issue that we need to pay attention with all this is the deep pocket, and they're also suing the bar that they took the shots from. The deep pockets in this is not Alex Murdaugh in this scenario. It's Parker's Kitchen, and it's Luther's Well, because they've got what's called a dram shop policy. Now, for people that don't know, if someone is in a DUI accident and hurt somebody or harm somebody, you don't just go after that person's car insurance. If they were overserved at a bar or in some other scenario like that, then you're able to go after that bar for overserving them because they contributed to the alcohol. And those policies are typically very big policies. In fact, when bars get hit with dram shop issues, multiple times, the bars tend to not make it because the dram shop insurance is so high, and because of the scenario. And so in that, one of the people who have been hit with that lawsuit is Parker's Kitchen out of Beaufort, which, we've got them here in Charleston and everything. Great gas stations, love them. But
they are definitely a deep pocket.
They're very
deep pocket. They have
a
lot of. This isn't a one and done convenience store. They're not just in a couple of counties in South Carolina. This is a huge operation.
Huge operation. And what is going on is the lawsuit was filed in Hampton County. So Parker's Kitchen's lawyer has said, here's what we're going to do. We want the venue changed. We don't think that Mallory Beach, our client, is going to get a fair trial in Hampton County. We would like to change the venue. What's interesting about that is they went out and hired Merle Smith. I know you're good friends with him. We've both got a lot of respect for him.
Known him for years. Yep. He's chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee of the South Carolina House of Representatives. A lot of people think when you hire a legislator as your lawyer and get him to sit at the table, it has a direct impact on the case. People think it's unfair because you're swaying a judge. But then what happened?
Yeah, well, and also even more so that they think you're swaying the judge. What happened is what a lot of people didn't think would happen, and it's something we really need to pay attention to. On top of him being chairman of Ways and Means, he's also on the Judicial Merit Selection Committee. Now, in South Carolina, the way that we pick judges is something that you were an active process that you were really involved in.
We have a 10-member committee. If you want to run for judge in South Carolina, you got to meet the minimum requirements, 5 years as a lawyer, and there's yada requirements. Yeah. And then you go in front of this committee. You file to say, I want to run. You go in front of this committee. This committee decides whether or not your candidacy gets a vote in front of the General Assembly. South Carolina is one of only 2 states in the country where the General Assembly actually elects the judges. Personally, I think that's better than a governor making an appointment or another system, because you tend to have more middle-of-the-road judges because they have to get the votes of everybody in the General Assembly to get there, instead of swaying back and forth with the right or the left, depending on who the governor is. Yeah. So there are 2 states that do this. We're one of them. You have to go in front of this committee. Merrill Smith chairs this committee.
Exactly. And this committee goes through and checks whether or not the judge is qualified based on those minimum requirements.
If he finds him qualified, and it's totally in their subjective opinion, qualified or not, they send him to the General Assembly to have a vote.
Well, and let's talk about that real quick before we dive back into the Murdaugh thing. The Judicial Merit Selection Committee, as an attorney, when judges and things come up, they send out blind surveys to all members of the bar to say, hey, tell us about this judge. Tell us about this person. Do you know this person? Have you had relationships with the person? Have you been in cases with these people? Has the judge been respectful or disrespectful? And we've had judges who those surveys have gone out. Members of the bar have responded and told stories about what happened in court, and the judges have either been reprimanded because of that, or they have not gotten through screening because of that.
I can get.
I don't want to name names. I don't want to name names.
I can name you 3 judges who had been judges for a long time who were removed because of those surveys. Yes,
exactly. So the system does police itself. So with all of that, that's the way it is now. Because that's the system we use in South Carolina, there's a I'd say a vocal minority, a very vocal minority out there that is consistently not liking that way that's done.
They want to change. They want a governor to appoint or some other method.
And when you look at it, actually, I think a lot of them want popular vote. And when you look at it and you see that that's the situation on its face, John Q. Citizen says, yeah, I'd rather pick the judge. I think I should pick the judge. But we're in a situation where you have to go through it. Now, what they say, a lot of folks like to say, is that there's a lot of impropriety that goes on, that it's inappropriate, that legislators get special treatment because of what's going on and whatnot. I think that we're in a scenario where that may or may not occur occasionally. I've been a state prosecutor. I've done numerous cases in state court. I sat next to a judge for a year as a law clerk. I've watched it firsthand, and I know for a fact that the judge I clerked for did not give preferential treatment to legislators. Mm-hmm. He did his job, and if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. Very similar to what now, like I said, we're going to tie this all back into the Murdaugh case. Very similar to what happened earlier this week when Chairman Smith argued the change of venue motion for Parker's Kitchen. There was the argument that went out. Now, the judge in that case is Judge Hall. Phenomenal judge, been a judge for a while. I've never had the privilege of being in front of him, but is a very good judge, or from what I've all heard. And on a side note, he's up for re-election this year.
And has been challenged.
So
meaning somebody else has stepped up and said, I want to be the judge. I want to take his seat. Yeah. I want to be the judge in his seat.
I want to run against him, and the legislature is going to vote on it. Right? The legislature is going to vote on it. All right. So not only is the legislature going to vote on it, they still have to go through screening. They still have to do all these things. Chairman Smith argues the change of venue motion, and what occurred was...
Hall's up for election this year.
With that guy
as the head
committee,
of the thing.
And Chairman Ways and Means, side note, who writes the judicial budget.
That's exactly right.
In charge of that. All right. Ruled against Chairman Smith.
He did.
So,
he did.
Granted, while we want to talk about all these improprieties, and that's a change of venue in Hampton County, that's a very easy motion for a judge to grant. We're gonna change the venue from the Murdaugh's home county that they control. We're gonna change the venue. That's a simple motion for a judge to grant if the judge felt that was the appropriate thing, and it wouldn't be Chairman Smith swing.
We're going to move the venue away from this county where everybody knows everybody involved to maybe somewhere where everybody doesn't. The jury pool is bigger to pick from, and maybe everybody doesn't know everybody like they do in a very small town like in Hampton County. So actually, I thought it was a pretty good motion. Yeah. I thought it made sense to move it. The judge disagreed with the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, with the chairman of the Judicial Merit Selection Committee, and ruled against him.
Which tells you that, it doesn't necessarily tell you, that's not the example to say, hey, the system is perfect and flawless, but it kind of goes to the whole point. Literally, the key person, the peg, the person that could make your life absolutely miserable, that could take your appointment of you, that could cause you not even to get out of screening to be voted on, right? That could cause that to happen. You ruled against them in a motion that you could have ruled for them.
And Judge Hall doing that tells me as much as I do believe our system is the best available out there, and do believe all of those things, in this instance, what it tells me is we need more Judge Halls.
Yeah, hands down.
That's what it means. Because he did what he thought was right, regardless of the circumstances surrounding him. We need more people like that to be sitting on the bench.
I could not agree more with you. I also think that it also goes to show that Murdaugh Smith for a long time.
Very long
He's
time.
a good guy. He's an ethical guy. He's not
a smart guy.
A smart guy. He's not the type of guy that is going to be vindictive in this scenario.
No, he won't be.
And so, I think it just kind of it's always fun when a lot of people are screaming about one thing or the other to have a case go out to say, hey, look at this.
We can talk about the raw politics of that thing too. Now that Judge Hall's ruled against him, you think, oh my goodness, maybe Murdaugh Smith will do something. Now all of a sudden, when Judge Hall gets in front of the screening committee, there's going to be a white hot spotlight to see what happens.
Yeah.
So it'll just, I believe, more than anything else, this thing gets handled straight up, and that means Judge Hall gets through screening and Judge Hall gets reelected judge.
Most likely. Well, we don't know. I haven't looked into who the person running against him is, so we don't know how that race is going to play out. But I don't think it deals off of this. I think it'll deal off and be the system that we've got. All right, we got a few minutes left, so let's move on to the mask ban that occurred.
It's interesting. Everybody kept talking about why isn't Governor McMaster.
Well, hold on. Let's
okay.
just so everybody knows, the state Supreme Court has refused to block the legislature's ban on school mask mandates, but made it clear that districts can still find a legal workaround. For the second time this month, the justices ruled the one-year law inserted in the state budget is constitutional, calling it valid and enforceable. So what I want to talk about in this scenario is that it was constitutional and that it's valid and enforceable. From a legislator's standpoint, from the Speaker of the House's standpoint, kind of break that down.
First of all, I want to touch on when they say there's workarounds. It's almost impossible to write an airtight law that no matter what you say, there's not a way to get around that. Well, that's almost impossible.
That's the beauty of our system.
Well, for somebody who's an attorney, yes, sir. It absolutely is. So it makes sense that they said that like that. But what they're saying here is that A, the General Assembly has the authority to do that. And B, local governments do not have the authority to unwind it once the General Assembly's done it. Think of our government in South Carolina as being like the General Assembly's like the head board of directors. And then all of the little governments, school boards, city councils, county councils, everybody else under that, they're smaller divisions of that big board of directors. So if the big board of directors says, here's the edict, this is what we're doing, then all the rest of them have to fall in line. They can't say, well, no, we're not going to do that. They can say it, but then the Supreme Court goes back and says, no. You have to do what the General Assembly said to do, because those are the folks who are elected by everybody all over the state. Somebody there represents literally every single person in the state, so that you make sure that that laws are being applied fairly across the state, not with little pockets here where bad things are happening. So personally, I was pleased to see them do that. What I started to say at the outset was a lot of people wonder, why can't the governor just issue a mask mandate? He doesn't have that power. The General Assembly has that power, not the governor. So if the governor wants a mask mandate, he's got to go to the General Assembly and did it. And I can tell you, in this particular instance, he had a lot to do with that provision being drafted, because he wanted to make sure that we would not be able to have mask mandates across the state. So bottom line, it is absolutely, the judge has said it anyway, so obviously it's constitutional, but it's absolutely constitutional. That is the General Assembly's power. It was exercised. The Supreme Court backed it up. Once again, as you said just a minute ago, it worked.
Yeah,
the system worked.
The system worked, and we're watching it work, and I think that's great. Now, as we're excuse me, as we're ticking down and about to close the show, we're going to move on to shameless plugs.
But real quick, we're going to say, Dog the Bounty Hunter, as my son said to me yesterday, we're going to have a real problem if Dog the Bounty Hunter finds Brian Laundrie, and the FBI does not.
I mean, we're gonna have a real issue, and that's gonna be crazy. I bet he's at the Appalachian Trail, and we'll get into that next week. Probably.
Be fun to, hopefully, if he's still out there, we'll talk about that next week.
But shameless plugs this week. What you got?
I got new koozies coming in. So drop by Harrell Square. Actually, it's be about another week, but drop by Harrell Square. Come into our office. You want a new koozie? They're snazzy. You taught me a fun little thing about them, and mine says on the bottom that it's a great thing.
There you go. So go by Harrell Square, get your koozie. It'll be good times on your way to get your new McRib that'll be back on November the 1st. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great rest of your week. This is Attorney Trey Harrell. I've been dealing with insurance companies my entire life, whether it's working for them or fighting against them. So if you've been injured in an accident and the insurance company is giving you the runaround, don't delay. Call 636-TREY, or you can find us online at attorneyharrell.com.